The Punisher One Last Kill dropped on Disney Plus 2 weeks ago, and within the very first few minutes, it delivered what I genuinely believe is the most disturbing and brutal sequence in Marvel history. We see a group of thugs target a completely defenseless homeless man, beating him mercilessly in the streets. And if that wasn't already upsetting enough, they then kill his dog. Right there, in front of you. No warning, no mercy. It's completely shocking. And honestly, it set the tone for everything that followed in this special. So let's get straight into it. Now, before we break down the key moments, it's worth setting the scene. The Punisher One Last Kill takes place between the first and second seasons of Daredevil Born Again. So if you haven't finished season 1 yet, be aware there are spoilers ahead. At the end of season 1, Frank Castle broke out of prison, and this special picks up right where that thread leaves off. Frank is out, he's on the run, and he's carrying decades of grief and trauma with him everywhere he goes. He's a man without a plan, and that tension runs through every single scene. I think that's one of the things that makes this special work so well. Jon Bernthal doesn't just play Frank as a killing machine, he plays him as a man who is genuinely broken. And this story gives him the space to show that in a way we haven't really seen before in the MCU. Now, the main antagonist of this special is Nucci, and she is one of the most dangerous crime bosses Frank Castle has ever faced, both in the comics and now on screen. Here, she confronts Frank directly and reminds him, in no uncertain terms, that he murdered her entire family, and she is not willing to let that go unpunished. So she puts a bounty on his head and arranges for every criminal in the neighbourhood to come after him all at once. It's a brilliant setup for the final act. Nucci isn't just a villain, she's a force of nature. And the way she weaponizes the entire underworld against one man creates a real sense of escalating, suffocating danger throughout the special. But the most shocking moment in The Punisher One Last Kill, for me personally, came completely out of nowhere. We get an appearance from Karen Page, not in the flesh, but as a hallucination inside Frank's mind. Now, I think this was a genuinely powerful creative decision. Karen was such an important figure in Frank's life during the Netflix series, and seeing her appear here as a kind of ghost of his conscience was deeply affecting. It reminded you of everything he's lost, and everything he's still carrying. It was brief, but it hit very hard. And speaking of emotional gut punches, the cemetery scene. This was, for me, one of the most heartbreaking moments in any Marvel project. Frank comes close to ending his own life right there, at the graves of his murdered families, as flashbacks of that night play through his mind. I think Jon Bernthal deserves enormous credit for this scene. You could feel every bit of Frank's pain. It wasn't played for shock value. It was handled with real sensitivity and weight. And it made everything that followed feel so much more personal. This isn't just a man fighting criminals. This is a man fighting to find a reason to keep going. Now, if the cemetery scene was the emotional peak of this special, the final shootout was absolutely the action peak. Nucci sends every criminal she recruited straight to Frank's location all at once. And what follows is, in my opinion, the most violent action sequence in Marvel history. And I mean that entirely as a compliment. However, here's the moment that elevated it beyond being just a brilliant fight sequence. In the middle of all that chaos, a little girl called Charlie calls out, "Daddy!" And in that single instant, something shifts in Frank entirely. She reminded him of his own daughter, Lisa, and he knew Whatever it cost him, he had to keep her safe. And I think that is the genius of this special. It takes what could have been a straightforward action sequence and turns it into a deeply emotional moment. Frank fighting to protect Charlie wasn't just the Punisher doing what the Punisher does. It was Frank Castle the father. And that distinction matters enormously. So, what's my overall verdict on The Punisher One Last Kill? It's really good. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's probably the most violent MCU entry ever made. And I genuinely don't think that's a criticism. It's entirely appropriate for a Frank Castle story. The Punisher is not a character who belongs in a brightly lit, family-friendly adventure. He belongs in the darkness. And this special understood that completely. What worked? John Bernthal's performance is exceptional throughout. The emotional beats, the Karen hallucination, the cemetery scene give real depth to a character who can sometimes be reduced to pure action. And the final shootout delivers everything fans of The Punisher have been waiting years to see on screen. Now, as for what comes next, Frank Castle's next confirmed appearance is in Spider-Man Brand New Day. And based on what we saw here, with Frank still driven by that need to protect the innocent, I think that could be a fascinating dynamic when he enters Peter Parker's world. I'm genuinely eager to find out how that plays out. This was a brilliant special. It had genuine emotional depth, extraordinary action, and one of John Bernthal's best performances. Not just as Frank Castle, but as an actor, full stop. The Punisher One Last Kill is exactly what fans of this character deserved. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my coverage of Frank Castle's next appearance in Spider-Man Brand New Day, because that is a crossover I have been very much looking forward to. Now, if you enjoyed this special, I think you're going to love my full review of Daredevil Born Again Season 2, which I'll have linked in the end screen. It's set in the same corner of the MCU, and if the tone of this special is your kind of thing, Born Again Season 2 is absolutely worth your time. I highly recommend you check it out. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.